I watched my sister-in-law Amanda's perfectly manicured fingers tear through the wrapping paper of my wedding gift, her red lips curved in anticipation. The moment she revealed the handmade quilt I'd spent 6 months creating, her expression shifted from excitement to disgust. A homemade blanket. She held it up with 2 fingers like it might contaminate her designer dress. "Sarah, darling, we have standards here." Her voice dripped with condescension as she addressed me in front of the gathered family members at her mansion's grand parlor. My husband Tom, Amanda's brother, squeezed my hand under the table. We'd been married just 3 months, and this was my first time attending one of their family's legendary Sunday brunches. Amanda had made it clear from the start that she considered me beneath their social standing. I began, but Amanda cut me off with a theatrical sigh. "You thought what?" "That we display this craft project in our home." She gestured around her marble-floored living room, decorated with artwork that probably cost more than my annual salary as a financial analyst. "Maybe you can use it in what do you call it? Your starter home." Her husband Charles, CEO of a prominent investment firm, chuckled from his leather armchair. Now, Amanda, not everyone can afford proper wedding gifts." He sipped his champagne, his Rolex catching the light. Though I must say, I expected better from Tom's wife. I felt Tom tense beside me, but I squeezed his hand back. Let them think I was hurt. Let them believe their words mattered. They had no idea who I really was. You see, while Amanda flaunted her wealthy lifestyle and Charles bragged about his business acumen, they didn't know that I was one of the youngest senior partners at Goldman Sachs. I'd kept my career quiet at Tom's request. He wanted his family to know me as a person first, not for my success. Now, sitting in their mansion, watching Amanda mock my gift, I was glad I'd maintained my cover. Especially since I knew something they didn't. Charles' investment firm was about to collapse, and Amanda's perfect world would shatter with it. 3 months earlier, during my routine analysis of market trends, I'd noticed irregularities in Charles's company's financial reports. As I dug deeper, I discovered a pattern of mismanagement and impending disaster. The firm was hemorrhaging money, and Charles was oblivious, too busy maintaining his image to notice the approaching storm. "I suppose we should be grateful she didn't give us macaroni art," Amanda continued, dropping the quilt onto a side table. Her friends, all designer-clad women with 2 perfect smiles, tittered appreciatively. "When are you planning to start working, Sarah?" Amanda's mother, Elizabeth, asked with feigned concern. "Tom's salary is decent, but in this family, we believe wives should contribute more than crafts." I took a small sip of my mimosa, hiding my smile. If they only knew that my last bonus alone could buy this mansion twice over. "Oh, I'm still figuring things out," I replied softly, playing my role. "We'll figure it out soon," Amanda sniffed. "We can't have charity cases in the family. Charles and I worked hard for our success." She gestured to her surroundings. The crystal chandelier, the imported furniture, the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking manicured gardens. Tom started to defend me, but I touched his arm gently. "It's okay, honey. Amanda's right, success takes hard work." Amanda missed my subtle emphasis on those last words, too busy showing off her new Hermes bag to her friends. But I knew that in exactly 14 days, she'd understand just how right I was. The next 2 weeks passed in a blur of market movements and careful preparation. I watched from my office as Charles's company's stock began its inevitable decline. Small tremors at first, nothing to alarm the average investor. But I recognized the signs of the approaching earthquake. Tom knew nothing of this. I kept my discovery professional, maintaining strict ethical boundaries. But I had ensured that when the crash came, our own investments would be protected. 13 days after the brunch, my phone buzzed with a text from Amanda. "Emergency family dinner tomorrow night. Attendance mandatory. We have exciting news to share." I could guess what the exciting news would be. Charles's company had just secured a seemingly major deal, a last-ditch effort to save the sinking ship. What Amanda didn't know was that the deal was built on sand, and tomorrow it would all wash away. That night, as Tom and I prepared for bed, he noticed me smiling at my laptop. "You seem cheerful for someone who got humiliated at brunch 2 weeks ago," he observed. I closed my computer, thinking of the financial reports I'd just reviewed. "Let's just say I have a feeling tomorrow's dinner will be interesting." "Sarah," he said seriously, "I'm sorry about how they treated you. Amanda's always been materialistic, but that was cruel. The quilt was beautiful. You put so much love into it. I kissed him softly. Don't worry about it. Sometimes people need to learn hard lessons about what really matters in life. The next evening, we arrived at Amanda and Charles's mansion to find it buzzing with excitement. We circulated with expensive champagne, and Amanda was holding court in the center of the room, practically glowing with pride. Charles's company just closed the biggest deal in its history, she announced as we entered. We're celebrating our success and announcing some changes. She shot me a smug look. We're buying the vacation house in the Hamptons we've had our eye on. Perhaps we'll invite you for a weekend once you've improved your circumstances. I accepted a glass of champagne, knowing it was the same brand I had cases of in my wine cellar. Congratulations, Amanda. Charles. Big changes can certainly come unexpectedly. Charles raised his glass. To success earned through hard work and intelligence, he proclaimed. Speaking of which, Sarah, perhaps you could learn something from Amanda about ambition. She's never settled for mediocrity. I checked my watch discreetly. The markets would open in Hong Kong in exactly 3 hours. Then the real changes would begin. Oh, I never settle, I replied quietly, but my voice was drowned out by the sound of clinking glasses and Amanda's laughter as she detailed her plans for the Hamptons house. The evening continued with increasing displays of wealth and condescension. Amanda paraded her latest purchases, artwork, jewelry, plans for a yacht. Each announcement was accompanied by a pointed comment about proper success and maintaining standards. I sat quietly, eating my perfectly prepared meal, watching the minutes tick by. Tom, sensing my unusual calm, kept glancing at me curiously. He'd never seen me so composed in the face of his sister's cruelty. At exactly 9:45 p.m., my phone buzzed. A news alert. Then another, and another. Charles's phone began ringing. He excused himself, looking mildly annoyed at the interruption to his celebratory dinner. 5 minutes later, he hadn't returned. Amanda was in the middle of describing their planned Christmas in Monaco when Charles burst back into the room, his face ashen. Amanda, he said hoarsely, we need to talk. Now. Not now, darling, I'm telling everyone about. Now, his voice cracked like a whip, silencing the room. I stood up, smoothing my dress. A simple black number that probably made Amanda assume it was cheap. In reality, it cost more than her entire wardrobe. Perhaps this is a good time to excuse ourselves, I suggested calmly. No, Charles said, his eyes wild. No one leaves. The deal, it's collapsed. The investors pulled out. The stock, it's all falling apart. Amanda laughed nervously. Darling, you're being dramatic. These things happen in business. Just fix it. Fix it? Charles ran his hands through his hair. Amanda, you don't understand. It's not just the deal. The whole company. We're finished. The room erupted in gasps and whispers. Amanda's champagne glass slipped from her fingers, shattering on the marble floor. What do you mean finished? She demanded. I watched as Charles explained in halting words how the company's fundamental weaknesses had been exposed, how their financial structure was collapsing, how everything they built was crumbling in real time. Amanda turned to her friends, but they were already making excuses to leave, avoiding her eyes. Within minutes, the room had cleared except for immediate family. This is just temporary, Amanda insisted, her voice rising. We have savings, investments, all tied to the company, Charles whispered. Everything. The houses, the cars. It's all leveraged. I stood up again, this time opening my designer clutch. The one Amanda had dismissed earlier as a nice knockoff. I removed my business card and placed it on the table. What's this? Amanda asked automatically, then froze as she read it. Senior partner, Goldman Sachs. But, you said. I never said anything, I corrected her gently. You assumed. You all assumed. The room fell silent as understanding dawned on their faces. Elizabeth, Amanda's mother, reached for the card with trembling fingers. All this time, I've been watching, I confirmed. Watching, analyzing, and preparing for this exact moment. You knew? Charles accused. You knew this would happen. Any competent financial analyst could have seen it coming, I replied. The signs were there. But you were all too busy judging my handmade quilt to notice the cracks in your foundation. Amanda collapsed into a chair, her perfect makeup streaking with tears. Why didn't you warn us? I picked up my purse, taking Tom's hand. Consider it a wedding gift, a lesson about true value and what really matters in life. By the way, that quilt you mocked, the pattern is an ancient design worth more than this house. I learned it while studying textile arts at Oxford before my first master's degree. As we walked to the door, I turned back one last time. Oh, and Amanda, you might want to hold onto that quilt. In about 24 hours, it'll be the most valuable thing you own. The next morning, I arrived at my office earlier than usual. The financial world was in chaos, with Charles's company's collapse making headlines across all major business news channels. As I sipped my coffee and reviewed the damage, my phone buzzed incessantly with messages from Amanda's family. I ignored them all. Tom sat in my home office, watching CNBC's coverage of the collapse. "Why did you tell me?" he asked quietly. "Professional ethics," I replied, adjusting my blazer. I couldn't disclose what I discovered through my position, but I could protect us from the fallout. I touched his shoulder gently. "Are you angry?" He shook his head, taking my hand. "No, watching Amanda treat you like that for months, knowing how brilliant you are, it was torture. I just wish that your sister hadn't learned her lesson quite so hard." I finished for him. Something like that. My phone buzzed again. Amanda's number. This time I answered. "Sarah," her voice cracked, all traces of yesterday's condescension gone. "Please, we need your help. The banks are calling, the credit cards are frozen, everything is falling apart." I checked my watch. "I have a meeting in 20 minutes, but I can meet you at the Pierre at noon. Their tea room is discreet." "The Pierre?" "Sarah, we can't afford." "I'll take care of it," I interrupted. "Consider it another wedding gift." The Pierre's tea room was exactly as elegant as I remembered. I'd chosen it deliberately. Let Amanda see me in my natural environment for once. I arrived early, wearing a bespoke suit that probably cost more than what was left in her bank account. Amanda arrived looking disheveled, her designer clothes from yesterday now seeming like costume jewelry, flashy but ultimately worthless. She'd brought Charles and their parents along, all looking shell-shocked. "Sarah," Elizabeth began as they sat down, "we had no idea." I raised my hand, silencing her. "Before we begin, I want to make something clear. I'm here as a financial professional, not a family member. Everything you say will be treated with appropriate confidentiality." Charles leaned forward. "Can you save the company?" "No," I replied simply. "The company is beyond saving. What I can do is help you salvage what's left of your personal assets, if you're willing to listen and follow my advice exactly." Amanda dabbed at her eyes with a napkin. "We've lost everything. The house, the cars. They're all taking them." "Not everything," I corrected her. "You still have that quilt." Flinch, remembering her cruel words. "Sarah, about that." "The quilt isn't important right now," I interrupted, opening my laptop. "What's important is preventing you from ending up homeless. Now let's look at your situation." Over the next hour, I outlined their options. They'd have to sell everything, liquidate all assets, and downsize dramatically. The mansion would go, along with the luxury cars and designer wardrobes. But with careful management, they could avoid complete destitution. "There's an apartment building in Queens," I explained, pulling up the details. "Clean, safe neighborhood. 2-bedroom units available. The owner is a client of mine. I can arrange a reasonable lease." "Queens?" Amanda whispered, horrified. "But all our friends aren't your friends anymore," I finished gently. "I saw their social media posts this morning. They're already distancing themselves." Charles stared at his hands. "How did I not see this coming?" "Because you were too busy maintaining appearances to look at the reality of your business," I replied. "A common mistake among failed CEOs. Elizabeth cleared her throat. "Sarah, about how we treated you. As I said, I'm here as a financial professional. Personal matters can wait." I turned my laptop around. "These are the papers you'll need to sign. I've arranged for a law firm to handle your bankruptcy filing. They're expensive, but they're the best, and yes, I'm covering their fees." "Why?" Amanda asked, her voice small. "Why help us at all, after how we treated you?" I closed my laptop, meeting her eyes. "Because unlike you, I don't measure people's worth by their bank accounts or addresses. Now, shall we discuss your new budget?" The next few weeks were a blur of paperwork, liquidation sales, and adjustments. I watched from a professional distance as Amanda's perfect world was dismantled piece by piece. The mansion sold at auction. The luxury cars repossessed. The designer clothes and jewelry sold to cover debts. Through it all, I maintained my professional demeanor, helping them navigate their new reality. Tom supported my decisions, understanding that this was about more than revenge, it was about teaching valuable lessons. 1 month after the collapse, I visited Amanda in her new Queens apartment. The space was small but clean, with bare walls where artwork worth millions had once hung. She kept the quilt though. It was displayed prominently on her couch. "It's the most beautiful thing I own now," she said quietly, touching the intricate pattern. "I never appreciated. I never really looked at it before." I sat down, accepting the coffee she offered in a simple mug, so different from her previous fine china. "How are you adjusting?" "It's humbling," she admitted. "Charles found a job as a junior analyst. Mom and Dad are living with their cousins upstate. Everything's different." "Different doesn't mean worse," I pointed out. "Sometimes it means more real." She was quiet for a moment. "Why didn't you tell us about your career, your success? Would you have believed me, or would you have accused me of lying to impress you?" She flinched. "I would have called you a liar," she admitted. I was horrible to you." "Yes, you were," I agreed calmly. "But now you have a chance to be better. How can you even look at me, after everything?" I stood up, straightening my suit. "Because I see something now that I never saw in your mansion, humanity. Keep the quilt, Amanda. Let it remind you of who you were and who you can choose to be." As I turned to leave, she called after me, "Sarah, the pattern, you said it was ancient. What does it mean?" I paused at the door. "It's a Buddhist design. It represents impermanence, the idea that nothing lasts forever. Not wealth, not status, not even hardship. Everything changes." "Like us," she whispered. "Exactly like us." 3 months later, I hosted a family dinner at my home. Not the modest house they'd assumed we lived in, but our real residence, a penthouse overlooking Central Park. Amanda came, along with Charles and their parents. They dressed simply now, having sold their designer clothes. As we sat down to dinner, Amanda looked around at my home, taking in the subtle wealth, the art, the furniture, the view. But her eyes kept returning to a framed photograph on my wall, me receiving an award at Goldman Sachs, years before I'd met Tom. "I understand now," she said softly. "Success isn't about showing off. It's about what you build, what you earn, who you help." I smiled, passing her the salad. "There might be hope for you yet." Tom squeezed my hand under the table, just as he had that day at brunch. But this time, everything was different. The air was clearer, the conversation genuine, the relationships real. Elizabeth raised her glass, a simple wine glass, not crystal. "To family," she said, "and to lessons learned." "To lessons learned," we echoed. Later that night, after everyone had left, I stood at my window, looking out over the city lights. Tom came up behind me, wrapping his arms around my waist. "You know what made you different from them?" he asked. "What's that?" "You never needed anyone to know how successful you were. You were secure enough to let them underestimate you." I turned to face him, and now they understand what real success looks like. It's not about mansions or designer clothes or showing off. It's about building something meaningful, helping others, and staying true to yourself. I thought about Amanda in her Queens apartment, learning to cook, applying for evening classes, finally becoming the person she could have been without the facade of wealth. Charles working his way up from the bottom, understanding the value of hard work. Their parents discovering that family meant more than status. Sometimes, I said, the biggest gift you can give someone is the chance to start over. Tom picked up my latest industry award from my desk, Woman of the Year in Finance. And sometimes the quietest person in the room is the most powerful. I smiled, thinking of that handmade quilt, now the centerpiece of Amanda's modest living room. True power isn't about making others feel small. It's about helping them grow. The next day, I received a text from Amanda. "Thank you for the quilt. I finally understand its value. Not the money it's worth, but the lesson it teaches. Everything changes, nothing is permanent, and sometimes losing everything helps you find what really matters." I saved the message, a reminder that sometimes the best revenge isn't about destroying someone. It's about helping them rebuild themselves into something better.